Welcome to the Story Learning Podcast, regular doses of language learning tips and motivation to help you become fluent in any language. With me, Olly Richards. For language programs, books, free resources, and much more, visit StoryLearning.com. Hello everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I'm very happy to have you here. If you are learning a foreign language, whether it's English, French, Spanish, Japanese, or gibberish, as a friend of mine said the other day, then you're in the right place. You're going to get the tips and tricks you need to become fluent in that language from me. And my name is Olly. I speak a number of languages myself, currently on my 9th, and I'm here to help you with whatever it is that you need to reach the next level. Now, a bit of housekeeping today before we get into the question. First of all, I have released a new book of English short stories. Now, you guys have been asking me for a long time for this, so I'm very happy it's released. There are 8 short stories in English. It's aimed at intermediate and upper intermediate level. So if you are listening to this and you understand what I'm saying, then it's probably right for you. The English is slightly simplified, and there are not so many really hard words. So you can basically enjoy reading whilst growing your vocabulary and learning English in a fun way. So to get a copy of the book, it is currently on promotion, on sale for only 99 cents. That's less than $1, which is crazy. But there are only, I think, 2 days left, or maybe even 1 day to get that. So if you would like to get the book of English short stories, you can look on Amazon for English Short Stories for Intermediate Learners by Olly Richards, or you can go to iwillteachyoualanguage.com/English stories. Also, for those of you who were interested in the Fluent Spanish Academy, I mentioned that in the episode a couple of days ago. There are 100 spots available in the beta testing group. Half of those have already gone. So if you are interested in joining the Fluent Spanish Academy, you will need to get your skates on, because by the time you listen to this, it will be filling up. Once the spots go, then the membership will close down for a while, and then when it is re-released later, it will be more expensive. So definitely check that out. Now, that's enough preamble. Let's get into today's question from Peru, from a chap called Mauricio.
Hi Olly, my name is Mauricio and I'm from Peru, and I would like to ask you some suggestions to solve my problem. Well, I studied Portuguese around 5 years ago, and I would say that I was very fluent in this language, and I was very proud of it because my Portuguese level was pretty good. And now I started to study French, and I'm studying it around for more than 1 year. But the main problem is that since I started to learn French, I have serious problems with my Portuguese. As every time I'm trying to speak Portuguese, I'm always using lots of French words in the middle, and I really feel angry, embarrassed, and sometimes frustrated as I'm making many vocabulary mistakes that I hadn't made before, and I really feel that my Portuguese is getting worse. So I would like to know what can I do to keep my Portuguese level. Thanks a lot.
Mauricio, thank you very much for a cool question. It's a recurring theme, isn't it, on the podcast about learning multiple languages. So I'll try to give a specific answer to this so that I don't repeat myself too much. In episode 9 of the podcast, Nikki, the wonderful Nikki, asked about keeping separate Kurmanji and Turkish. And then in episode 109, Andy asked about learning French whilst maintaining his very, very polished Spanish. Now, both of those people are native English speakers. And so for you, Mauricio, you're obviously, I'm guessing, a native Spanish speaker. And you've learnt to speak Portuguese well, so congratulations on that. Portuguese is, I've known a lot of native Spanish speakers who learn to speak Portuguese. It's very similar to Spanish. And so for you guys, it's not the hardest language in the world. I'm guessing, I would have thought that you were able to learn to speak Portuguese quite quickly and quite well. So there's kind of a danger with that, because when you learn a language that's very similar to your own, what happens is that you don't have to, because your brain can switch quite easily to this new language, you don't have to go through all of the struggle that other people have to. So, for example, for a native English speaker to learn Portuguese, they have to work a lot harder because they have to like learn these new Portuguese words and find ways of anchoring them in their brain, memorizing them. So it takes longer, but the lasting connection, I think, is stronger. And so what's probably happening now with you is that because you're learning French, which is more different than Portuguese from Spanish, you're finding that you don't have these, like you're realizing that the depth of the Portuguese that you know is not as strong as perhaps as you thought it was. And I have experience of this myself because I learnt Spanish before I learnt Portuguese. And my Spanish was really good at the time. And then I subsequently went to Brazil and learnt Portuguese. And my Portuguese got really good as well. I spent a long, kind of intensive period learning Portuguese. And then I remember one day I went back, I got on a plane and I went back to London and I met my Spanish friend, Patricia, and we caught up and we spoke in Spanish. But I remember she just turned around to me and said, like, ¿Qué pasa con tu español, tío? Like, what is going on with your Spanish? Like, she just... Because I was speaking Spanish, like, using Portuguese grammar. And it was all over the place. And I remember... I remember it because I would start to use verbs in the infinitive form, like you do in Brazilian Portuguese, and putting the pronoun before the verb, which is a very common thing to do in Portuguese, but not in Spanish. So if you would say, like in Portuguese, something like "Você tem que me falar para eu poder aprender," which is saying you have to speak to me so I can learn. Você tem que me falar para eu poder aprender. I would say, what I would do is I would say in Spanish something like "Tienes que me hablar para eu poder aprender," which is totally wrong. So "Tienes que hablarme para que yo pueda aprender." The grammar's different. It's kind of subtly different, but different nonetheless, right? And I remember, so I was speaking with Patricia in this kind of weird mix of Spanish and Portuguese grammar. And so, despite being very strong in these two languages, I still totally mix them up. So, I realized that was a good lesson for me, because I realized that it doesn't matter how strong your languages are, they can still be mixed up. And the closer the languages are, the easier it is to mix them up. So what happened after that was, because I'm a musician, and I at the time was always playing lots of Brazilian music, bossa nova, samba here in London, and I would go out and I would play music in the evenings. I'd go to gigs, and I'd always be surrounded by Latin American friends, so Brazilians, Colombians, Ecuadorians, and we would have Portuguese and Spanish going on all night. So I very quickly kind of got used to having to switch, like, from Spanish to Portuguese, from Spanish, Portuguese, like, back and forth. And I don't remember really how long it took. It was probably a process of a few months. But I remember that after a certain period, I went from totally mixing up both of them to being able to switch, like, very, very well between the two without any trouble at all. And like, so much so that people, I remember people would turn around to me and go, how can you do that? How is it possible to switch between those two? Like, because even the native Brazilians and Spanish-speaking South Americans there, they couldn't do that. And it was, the reason I could do it was because I spent, like, that period of a few months or whatever it was, like, every day or every week at least, practicing switching. So I learned that learning to speak and maintain two similar languages, is almost like learning a new language altogether, because you've got to train your brain to keep them separate in your head. All right. So for you, Mauricio, you've got your Portuguese, and it's still there in your head. So don't worry about it. If you went to Brazil, within a few days, you'd be back to normal. So you haven't lost it. What's happening is it's kind of mixed up in your head. So what you need to do is to, I think, focus on your French, and you need to get your French to as good a level as you can, and I'm sure you'll be able to do that because you speak great English and you speak good Portuguese, so you'll have no problem learning French. Get your French to a good level, because in order to use two languages together properly, they have to be at a good level, right? So get your French to a good level, and then what you need to do is focus your time every week in using both Portuguese and French in real situations. Now, I don't know how you're going to do that. It might be a question of going to language events in your hometown, or having italki lessons on Skype, for example. Whatever it is, the only way that you're going to keep your your Portuguese and your French separate and accurate is by using them both together in your daily life. Right? There's no other way around it. That's all I'd say. Like, it really is as simple as that. You might be able to invent exercises to get around it. You could try doing things like, if you're walking down the street and you think something in Spanish, say it to yourself in French and then say it to yourself in Portuguese. I do that kind of thing sometimes, but it's all kind of very tangential. It's not addressing the real issue, which is that if you want to speak good Spanish, good Portuguese and good French and keep them separate, you've got to be using both of them in your daily life. All right, so I hope that helps. If you would like to ask me a question, the place to do that is iwillteachyoualanguage.com/ask. There are a few questions in the queue at the moment, but not that many. So if you'd like to get a question in, this would be a very good time to do that. You can do it from your phone or from your computer. And at the end of every episode, I like to leave you with a resource of some kind on the topic of the show. But I think today what I'm going to do is suggest to you, if you are learning English, go and pick up a copy of English Short Stories for Intermediate Learners. It's my new book. You can get it for just 99 cents for the next couple of days. After that, it's still cheap. It's like $3 or something on Kindle. It's a bit more expensive on paperback, but then you get the physical book, so it's worth it. So been working very, very hard on this. All you guys learning English, some really fun stories for you, and hopefully you will really enjoy them. Hopefully it will help you improve your English as you'll be reading a lot. Definitely send me an email. Let me know how you enjoy the stories. I'd love to hear from you. To pick up a copy, go to iwillteachyoualanguage.com/English stories. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode of the podcast. Take care.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. And here at Story Learning, everything that I do is powered by stories, whether that's writing books, teaching lessons, crafting courses. My mission is to help everyone succeed at learning a new language through the power of story. And we now have comprehensive language courses in over 15 languages, from Spanish to French, Korean to Japanese, and across all levels from beginner to mastery. And you can take a 7-day free trial of any of these programs by visiting storylearning.com/courses. I've poured my heart and soul into creating these courses over the last 10 or so years, and we've helped tens of thousands of new students achieve their dreams of learning a new language, all through the power of story. So go ahead and take a free trial. There's no commitment. You can try out our method for free, see if this can also be the breakthrough for you that it's been for so many other people. storylearning.com/courses.